Winning an argument has nothing to do with being right. In fact, the man who's right usually loses because he's too busy proving facts, while the other is seizing control. Modern debates aren't about truth. They're about dominance. Control the frame, control the outcome. And here's the brutal truth. Most people lose before they even open their mouth. They over-explain, get emotional, and fight for approval. That's not power. That's panic. The world has taught you to defend yourself, to appeal to logic, to beg for agreement. But Machiavelli would laugh at that, because the argument isn't a search for truth, it's a performance for influence. And the one who understands that wins. Machiavelli knew the courtroom, the palace, and the street all followed the same rule. Arguments are not won by evidence, they're won by perception. The man who keeps his frame, who never flinches, who speaks less but with control, that man dictates reality. Not because he's right, but because he sounds like he is. You're not here to be accurate, you're here to dominate the narrative. And that begins the moment you stop trying to win with truth and start winning with strategy. By the end of this video, you won't just know how to win arguments, you'll know how to turn any conversation into psychological warfare. Whether you're right or wrong won't even matter. Because after this, you'll know how to control tone, trigger uncertainty, and make your opponent doubt their own position, without raising your voice once. Before we dive in, I say thank you all my supporters. Take a moment to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this with others who need to see it. Rescue someone today. This channel is not for everyone. It's not for the ones who still believe in being passive, being pushed about. It's not for those waiting to be chosen, understood, or saved. This is for the few who are done explaining themselves, who are ready to step into psychological control, who want to command respect, not ask for it. If that's what you're here for, subscribe now. Let's begin. You see, most people walk into an argument trying to be right. But Machiavellians, men of strategy, not sentiment, walk in with one goal: to win. Here's the truth they don't teach in schools and won't write in leadership books. Truth doesn't matter. Not in real power dynamics. What matters is who controls the tempo, the tone, and the emotional climate. Because the person who controls the emotional environment controls the entire frame of the argument. Watch any weak debater. They scramble for facts, they plead for understanding, they fight tooth and nail to prove they're correct. But the one who's truly in power, he's calm, he's composed, his voice doesn't rise. Because he knows that certainty beats correctness. Always. And this is why most people lose arguments before they open their mouths. They come in emotionally invested, desperately needing to be validated. But power doesn't seek validation. It enforces its frame. It bends the perception of everyone in the room toward its own lens, and suddenly the lie becomes more convincing than the truth. Why? Because people don't follow truth. They follow presence. They follow the person who sounds like a leader, who looks unbothered, who speaks as if the world already agrees with them. Machiavelli would say, "It is not necessity that makes the masses believe, it is persuasion. Your presence is persuasion. And if you don't command it, someone else will define it for you." Here's the psychological key. Non-reactivity is dominance. When you stay still, while others flail, when you speak slowly while they interrupt, when you smile while they grow red-faced and frantic, you're not just winning the argument. You're showing the room who owns the frame. Frame is everything. If they attack and you defend, you've lost the frame. But if they attack and you redirect or elevate the issue to a higher plane, you flip the power structure. The debate is no longer about facts. It's about who looks like they're in charge of reality itself. That's the Machiavellian advantage. The strongest argument is never the loudest. It's the one that plants doubt, steals tempo, and breaks the opponent's rhythm without ever needing to shout. It's not about truth, it's about control. And control begins the moment you stop trying to win with logic and start mastering perception. You have to understand, there is no such thing as a fair argument. Every conversation is a battlefield for one thing: the frame. And the person who sets the frame doesn't just control the topic, they control the outcome. Understand this. Facts are submissive to frames. Logic bends to the emotional lens through which it is perceived. If you define the terms, if you set the tone, if you determine what this argument means, then you've already won, even if you're wrong. When someone challenges you, weak men react. Strategic men reframe. They don't answer questions, they question the premise. They don't follow emotional bait, they reroute the narrative entirely. Example, them, why are you always late? You, let's talk about why you're always trying to control my schedule. See what happened there? They launched an attack. You didn't defend, you elevated, you redirected, and now they're off balance. This is psychological judo. You never absorb their force, you use it to destabilize them. You move the spotlight, you make them explain. You become the one asking questions, not to get answers, but to exert dominance. Here are your weapons. Redirect. That's not what this is about. Reframe. It's not that I don't care, it's that I've stopped explaining myself. Elevate. We're not arguing about this, we're arguing about respect. Each of these lines doesn't respond. It defines, it seizes control. Because once you own the why behind the argument, you own the room. The biggest mistake people make, they argue inside the frame their opponent gives them. That's playing on enemy territory. That's submission disguised as engagement. Machiavelli understood, power is not found in facts, it's found in perception. And perception is shaped by who looks like the authority. If you sound like the defendant, you've already lost. But if you speak like the judge, firm, slow, and above the noise, everyone else starts looking guilty. Want to win? Speak less, but frame harder. Every sentence you say should define reality, not react to it. Here's how a Machiavellian frames an argument. 1. He sets the pace. He speaks slowly, breaks eye contact when he wants, not when they do. 2. He controls the topic. If the conversation drifts, he brings it back or elevates it. 3. He looks emotionally untouched. Even when attacked personally, his face doesn't flinch. Why? Because emotional neutrality is frame control. When you don't react, your silence forces others to fill in the gaps, and they usually fill them with weakness. When you control the frame, they can't even see the truth without your lens. And that's not just winning, that's domination. Anger is loud, power is quiet. Most people step into arguments like it's a boxing match, punching with words, swinging with emotion. But Machiavellians? They don't step into the ring, they control the arena. And their secret weapon isn't what they say, it's what they don't feel. Understand this. The person who gets emotional first loses. The one who raises their voice, frowns, flinches, or defends themselves loses. Not because they're wrong, but because they've surrendered control of their emotional state. In a battle of minds, your opponent's rage is a lever. When they overreact, they reveal what they fear, they show you their weaknesses. And the more you stay calm, silent even, the more they unravel. Machiavellian strategy is this. Use their emotion to prove their instability. They rant. You listen. They raise their voice. You lower yours. They attack. You tilt your head and smirk. What happens next? The room turns. People stop hearing their words and start noticing your composure. And in that moment, you've already won. Here's why. 1. Rage is validation. They're emotional spike signals that you've hit a nerve. That's power. 2. Silence is provocation. The more you hold your peace, the more they fill it with noise, and the more noise they make, the more insecure they look. 3. Composure is credibility. The calm man appears to be the one with truth on his side, even when he's wrong. Machiavelli didn't fight emotions with emotions. He weaponized them. He observed. He waited. And then, when the opponent's fury exposed their blind spot, then he struck. Try this in practice. Let them insult you. Say nothing. Hold eye contact for 1 second too long. Let them storm off. Don't follow. Just return to your drink, your task, your peace. Let them accuse you. Say, it sounds like you're very emotional right now. Then pause. This last move is a killer. Not only are you refusing to defend yourself, but you're reframing the entire encounter as their emotional meltdown. And in the eyes of the crowd, especially in high-stakes environments like business, leadership, or social power dynamics, emotional outbursts discredit you faster than being wrong. The power move? Say less. Let them implode. Then walk away, leaving them in a pile of their own unchecked feelings. Because here's the truth. You don't need to attack their logic. Just let their behavior destroy their credibility. Let them dig their own grave and don't even offer a shovel. That's psychological warfare. That's cold-blooded strategy. That's emotional mastery. In the war of words, most people fight with volume. They speak faster, louder, longer. They think dominance is found in the flood of explanations and the force of shouting. Machiavellians know better. Power is not how much you say, it's how you say it. And when you understand verbal control, you don't need to win arguments by logic, you win by presence. This is verbal judo. Precision over passion, silence between statements, and language so deliberate it cuts through noise like a scalpel. Here's how the elite do it. 1. Speak slowly. Speak with certainty. Every word you say should feel like it's carved into stone. No rush, no filler. Just calm, deliberate speech. When you speak slowly, you force others to adjust to your tempo. And whoever sets the tempo controls the room. This psychological dominance is instant. Fast talkers sound nervous. Slow speakers sound like they're used to being listened to. Say it like you've already won. 2. Eliminate weak words. No maybe, no I think, no kind of, no just. These are submission signals. They signal self-doubt. They invite challenge. Speak in clean, declarative statements. That's false? I don't accept that premise. That's not what I said. That's your interpretation. This isn't rudeness. This is verbal combat. The goal isn't to be polite, it's to remain in control. 3. Use questions as weapons. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the one defending himself. It's the one asking the questions. Try this. Why are you so emotional right now? What exactly are you trying to prove? Are you sure you understand what you're saying? These questions do 3 things at once. They deflect pressure. They shift the spotlight, and they put your opponent on the back foot. Questions destabilize. They unframe your opponent's narrative and force them to explain themselves, which automatically puts them in the weaker position. Machiavellians don't chase clarity. They demand it from others and then weaponize the confusion that follows. 4. Strategic repetition. Calm domination. Sometimes you don't need a new point. You just need to repeat your statement calmly until it breaks them. Them, you're twisting my words. You, that's not what I said. Them, yes, you did. You, that's not what I said. Shouting, that's not what I said. The more emotional they get, the more calm you stay, and suddenly they look unstable. You look unshakable. You've just won, without escalating, without explaining, without flinching. 5. Use silence like a blade. After you make a strong point, stop talking. Let it hang in the air. Let them fidget. Let them scramble to fill the silence. Most people fear silence. You should weaponize it. Every pause increases tension. Every second of silence is pressure. And when people feel pressure, they make mistakes. Machiavellian principle. Attack through precision, not passion. You don't win arguments by overwhelming. You win by undermining. Let them shout. Let them sweat. Let them overshare. You stay still. Speak sharp. Stay cold. Because at the end of the day, it's not the loudest man who wins. It's the man who sounds like he knows he's right, even when he's wrong. That's verbal judo. That's language as strategy. Most people walk into an argument believing it's a battlefield where every inch must be defended. They swing at everything, defend every angle, refuse to give up even the smallest ground. And they lose. Why? Because desperation to appear right is a form of weakness. It shows emotional investment. It shows insecurity. It exposes your ego. But Machiavellians play a different game. They concede small to win big. They let the opponent score meaningless points to lower their guard. They play reasonable to disarm. And then when the opponent is relaxed, they strike with surgical precision. 1. Agree on what doesn't matter. Someone attacks your wording, your phrasing, your tone. Most people get defensive. A Machiavellian smiles and says, "You're right, I could have said that better." That one line shifts the entire energy. You've conceded something irrelevant, and in doing so, you appear calm, balanced, and intelligent. But in reality, you've just taken the emotional upper hand. Now your opponent feels smarter, feels justified, feels safe. That's when you pivot and drop the core point with cold clarity. 2. Look objective, even when you're strategic. People trust those who appear unbiased. The problem is, bias is human, but perception is controllable. By conceding minor points, you look objective. You look like you're focused on truth, not ego. Try lines like, "You've got a fair point there." "That's a good observation, I agree. I can see how that might be true." These phrases soften your presence, but make no mistake, they're not submission, they're bait. Because while the opponent is soaking in their small victory, you're positioning for the real strike. 3. Hit them after they relax. After a concession, the guard comes down. That's when your real point lands harder, because it sounds measured, not emotional. Them, "You said X, but that's not technically accurate." You, "True, that wording could have been better, but the underlying point still stands, and the numbers back it up." Now you've neutralized their correction and reinforced your authority. Smooth, calm, lethal. 4. Never fight over shells, only over cores. Most arguments are filled with distractions, semantics, hypotheticals, emotional tangents. That's the shell. You want the core, the fundamental truth, the power position, the leverage point. Concede the shell, dominate the core. Example, them, "But not everyone reacts that way." You, "Absolutely, there are always exceptions, but the pattern is clear and it's happening consistently enough to matter." You just disarmed their deflection without resisting it. Now you're back on track, driving the narrative. 5. Machiavelli's rule: bend like a reed, snap back like steel. Flexibility doesn't mean weakness. It's the opposite. It's control. It's strategy. You don't get stuck in the mud of every disagreement. You bend where it's irrelevant, and when the moment comes, you deliver the killing blow to the argument with composure, precision, and dominance. Let others burn their energy defending nonsense. You stay above it. Make small concessions with a smile. Then win the war they didn't even know they were in. Because the real victory isn't in being right, it's in being followed. And people follow the calm, the composed, the ones who seem so secure in their truth. They can afford to concede and still win. In any argument, there are always more eyes watching than voices speaking. And the Machiavellian knows, you're not arguing to convince the person in front of you. You're arguing to dominate the room. Whether it's a meeting, a debate, a comment section, or a quiet gathering, the real win isn't in making your opponent submit. It's in making the observers side with your power. Public perception is the real battleground. Bookmark 1. The silent majority is the real prize. Most people are quiet during confrontation, but they're always watching, evaluating, judging. They may not say a word, but they're forming opinions. Who's calm? Who's emotional? Who sounds composed? Who looks desperate? Machiavellian strategy is about shaping those perceptions. You don't want your opponent to crumble. You want the room to quietly crown you the winner. Bookmark 629 IC Depu. Frame your language for the room. Stop speaking directly to your opponent. Begin speaking around them. Don't say, "You're being emotional." Say, "Some people get emotional when the facts don't support them." It's subtle, but it's devastating. You've just painted them as unstable without addressing them directly. The audience hears it, feels it, and starts siding with you without even realizing why. Another powerful phrase, "Let's stay focused on what matters here." That one sentence shifts the tone. Now you sound like the voice of reason, and every observer starts questioning your opponent's emotional volatility. Bookmark 3. Make the opponent the villain of their own story. If your opponent gets loud, let them. If they interrupt, let them. If they insult, let them. You say nothing, or calmly say, "Please finish." That's it. The room sees two people, one losing control and one remaining composed. And that comparison is fatal for them. You don't destroy your opponent with words. You let their behavior do the work. 4. Use strategic questions that echo Earth. Ask questions that the audience wants answered, even if your opponent refuses to respond properly. Examples. If that's true, why do the results say otherwise? What exactly are you trying to prove? Is this about facts or just your feelings? You're not looking for real answers. You're planting seeds of doubt in the minds of the people watching. You're shaping narrative perception. That's Machiavellian power. Bookmark 2J5R5. Understand the game. It's not about the argument. The room won't remember every detail. They won't recall the facts or logic, but they will remember who looked calm, who looked desperate, who looked powerful. That's the memory you must control. Your tone, your posture, your timing, your restraint. These leave lasting impressions, far more than any witty comeback. In politics, business, and public life, people don't follow the most correct person. They follow the one who looks like a leader. So stop arguing for facts. Start arguing for loyalty, energy trying to beat someone who's already emotional. Focus on converting the observers. If you win the room, your opponent becomes irrelevant. True power is influence without resistance. And the audience will always follow the one who looks like they've already won. 8. Exit with power. Never argue forever. 400 to 500 words. A king does not argue endlessly. He speaks, he's heard, then he leaves. One of the greatest mistakes people make during confrontation is lingering. They want to win so badly they stay too long, debating, defending, explaining. But here's the truth. If you're still arguing, you're already losing. Because true power doesn't beg to be accepted. It declares and disappears. 1. Know when to exit. In every argument, there's a peak moment, a point where your frame has landed, your presence is felt, and the opponent has either unraveled or stalled. That's when the Machiavellian knows it's time to go. Why? Because any word said beyond that point doesn't build your position. It weakens it. It smells like desperation, like a need to convince. Power never chases. Drop your final line. Make it clean. Make it simple. Then walk away. Examples. We'll let the results speak. This isn't worth my time. I've said what needs to be said. Say it once and leave. 2. Silence creates obsession. When you walk away without flinching, without needing the last word, you become an unsolvable puzzle in their mind. You starve them of closure, and that drives insecure people insane. They'll replay the conversation, re-argue it in their heads, imagine comebacks, feel powerless. You didn't out-talk them, you out-framed them, and now your silence is screaming inside their mind. Mark 7:5-3. The one who ends it, owns it. Most people don't remember the full argument. They remember how it ended. So end it like a strategist. Don't raise your voice. Don't get in the last jab. Just step away like someone who knows they've already won. The Machiavellian truth is this. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You need to dominate the ending. That's what echoes. Bookmark. 4. Power is not in winning the argument. It's in controlling the narrative. If you argue too long, you look insecure. If you fight for every point, you seem fragile. But if you drop a powerful line, go quiet and leave the room, you become the voice that lingers in everyone's head. Why? Because people respect what they can't shake, what they can't argue with, what walks away and doesn't come back to explain itself. Final Machiavellian rule. The last word isn't said, it's remembered. So, make your exit a moment, not a fade, a sharp cut, a cold ending. And when they're left staring at the silence you created, wondering what they should have said, you've already won. A peasant fights for survival. A king doesn't fight, he commands. And when it comes to argument, this distinction means everything. Weak men argue to be liked. They plead for agreement. They raise their voices, throw facts, beg for understanding. But understand this. Kings don't seek approval. Kings define reality. 1. Never chase agreement. Command attention. You lose power the moment you try to convince. Because the second you seek someone's agreement, you're implying they have something you need. And Machiavelli would tell you, power does not negotiate with those beneath it. It asserts, it sets the standard. When you speak, do it like someone whose words are final. Not up for discussion, not bait for validation. People follow not the loudest voice, but the most certain one. Bookmark 2. Don't fight for truth. Fight to define it. The world doesn't run on truth. It runs on perception. And those who control the narrative control the outcome. If you step into a debate thinking I'm right so I'll win, you've already lost, because people don't follow correctness. They follow certainty wrapped in confidence. If you want to win, stop trying to prove anything. Instead, frame everything. Don't answer their question. Question their question. Don't react to their frame. Rebuild it on your terms. You're missing the real point. That's not what this is about. Let's elevate the conversation. You don't argue inside their world. You pull them into yours. 3. Let fools fight to be right. You stay in control. Peasants shout. Peasants chase. Peasants explain themselves endlessly, hoping someone listens. But the king? He watches. He speaks with minimal force. He lets others collapse under the weight of their own noise. Because the man who says the least while holding the room, that's the man everyone listens to. 4. When you master this, even silence sounds like victory. You don't need to win the debate. You need to become the authority in the room. Argue like a peasant, and you'll leave sweating, defending, and forgotten. Argue like a king, and you'll leave silent, composed, and unshakably remembered. Because in the game of power, dominance isn't shown by how much you say, it's shown by how little you need to. This wasn't argument advice. This was psychological warfare. Every tactic, every frame, every silence was a weapon. And now you hold the arsenal. But this is just the beginning. Because in a world where everyone's trying to be liked, the one who masters fear, silence, and control becomes unstoppable. So if you're done explaining yourself, if you're done being out-talked, out-framed, and outplayed, then you're in the right place. Subscribe now. This channel isn't for the agreeable, it's for the strategic. Because in the end, power doesn't belong to the loud, it belongs to the dangerous. And the most dangerous man in any room is the one who knows how to win the war without raising his voice.